Okay.
So we were talking about just your memories of what it was like to work for Jim.
Right. It was great working with Jim. He, such a hard worker. He, I would get here in the morning. He was already here for hours. I would leave at the end of the day. He was still here. I thought he lived here for a while because he was always here. So dedicated and such an inspiration. I mean, taking the business where it went for all these years and working hard, very old school, which I love. Being part of the family-owned business, you know, a lot of it is we're behind the times in a lot of ways, technology-wise, but somehow we made it work. And he would come to me sometimes with bids that he wanted out, and it was on a sticky note. You know, it wasn't a formal bid form or anything. Just here, can you just send this to so and so? And that was how he did his business, and I loved it. I loved working with him, and he's very much missed. Yeah.
And you said he was here before you. What time would you get here in the morning?
Oh, I would get here at 7,
and he
he was already here, well into his third cup of coffee,
wow. And
working.
what time would you leave?
4:30, 5. You know, it was a full day,
And
but he was
still
always still here. Yeah.
And that was into right to the very end.
That was really almost to the very end. He the last couple months he wasn't feeling that great, but he would still come in, and he would put in a good portion of the day. He loved being here, and he loved the business, and so it was he was an inspiration. He really was, and I enjoyed. He was ornery. He was very professional, but he could be ornery, and but I loved it. It was fun.
So
fun
I've heard that the other people we've talked to have said ornery and but also very particular and very specific in terms of detail to the last.
Yes.
Dotting the last I and crossing the last T.
Absolutely.
Is that your experience?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Were there any examples of that you can share? That kind of speak to that level of focus that he had?
I will say this. We would, after being in accounting, and we would bring him in the payroll checks. The one thing is he always wanted to open the mail. He wanted to know what money was coming in, who had paid. He would remember that you owed us money, and he wanted to make sure that check came in. And we would receive hundreds of checks. We would bring him accounting checks. We'd bring him payroll checks. And there was a new employee, and he would run through the checks, and he would sign them, and he'd call me in and say, "Who's Joel?" And it was a new employee that, I just thought he went through, signed the checks, here you go. But he looked, and he would say, have questions on it. Same thing with our accounts payable. Why are we paying so-and-so so much money this month? What did we buy? He was always attention to detail. He knew, if a check was a little more than what it normally was for a month with one of our vendors, he would question it.
Wow.
And this is up until the very end.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty specific.
Very specific. Yes. Yes.
So again, you mentioned you started in '91, and of course you were here as I was for the earthquake in '89.
Right.
So I'm curious, when you stepped into it, the downtown's being rebuilt, but what your memories were of the earthquake and then starting here.
Right. Well, the memories of the earthquake, I was actually working in Scotts Valley, and I just left work, and I was on Scotts Valley Drive, and I didn't know what was happening. So yeah, rebuilding Santa Cruz, that was a crazy time. But with going to George Wilson in '91, they were on River Street, and so although downtown was affected, that end of Pacific Avenue and River Street wasn't affected as much structurally, so we didn't feel a lot of that pain during those times that I remember.
Okay, but in terms of when you started in '91, that rebuild's still going on, right?
Oh yeah,
so
and we were busy, right, and we were super busy. Yeah.
Like significantly noticeable.
Oh yeah.
Difference in how
Yeah.
busy.
Oh yeah, and because we're a local business too, a lot of people want to go with local company. So it was good. And we had a full service counter too. So a lot of people came in for plumbing needs and HVAC needs that, you know, they could just come and pick up rather than ordering, and that kept everybody busy too.
Right, okay. Yeah, so the earthquake is something we're definitely talking about. In terms of working here, how much pride do you take in working here? Obviously, you've been here a long time.
Oh,
So that obviously speaks
yeah.
to.
So much pride. The Wilsons, being, you know, the family-owned business has been an unbelievable experience. And working for the Wilsons, their family is so kind and generous and caring, and they truly care about their employees. They truly do, all of them. And which is why, too, this acquisition that happened, you know, a year and a half ago was super emotional for a lot of us because it was so different. But we also know that the Wilsons were doing it because they did care about us and they wanted to see us be able to continue working and thriving without them, you know, without their presence here. And it wasn't anything other than that. And so I think once everybody understood that, it was good. But for me, I couldn't ask for a better 28 years of employment. You know, it's not often that you find people that have worked at the same business for decades. And we have so many people that have, and a lot of that reason is because of the Wilsons.
Excuse me. Sorry.
And my, yeah.
In terms of working, gosh, how I need a break.
Tissue?
What the heck, Jacob?
I'll give you tissue.
No, I don't need that. I mean, it's cough. We good, Nico? So I'm curious, you said what you take pride in, but then I'm also curious, you work for Jim and now working for Tom and Blue. What's that like in terms of maybe their similarities and differences with?
Sure, sure. Blue is a lot like his dad. Very matter of fact, ornery, a little grumpy at times. Tom is one of the kindest people I've ever met. And he hardly ever raises his voice or gets upset. The only time I know he's upset is when I get something from him, and his writing is usually, you can hardly read it because it's so small. And when you get it, it goes from small to bigger to bigger to bigger, and then it's giant. But other than that, I don't think that man has a mean bone in his body. He's so kind, and runs the company that way. You know, he truly has compassion for everyone, our customers, our vendors, the employees, his family. So it's been a pleasure working with both of them, and in different ways. Like I said, Blue, you know, he'll scream out of his office, "Lisa, what'd you do?" or "Why'd you do that?" And Tom will come in and go, "Excuse me, you know, I have a question." And so different dynamics. Blue is definitely more like his father, and I understand that George was a lot that way too. I never had the opportunity to meet George. He was still here when I started, but was not actively working in the office.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that as well about George.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
type of stickler.
Right.
So when you hear George H. Wilson, what do you think of?
A great company. Yeah, a great company that has been here almost 100 years. They're reputable. They're, I would call them in a minute myself for anything. They stand behind their work. They're just good people and a great organization.
And I'm curious, since you've obviously been here a long time and grown up here, when you're out in the community and people know that you work here, what's the reaction in terms of, I work for George H.
They say, "Oh, those are the big red trucks." Those are the big red trucks I see all over town. Yep, that's it. Oh, they're great. They're fun. They're awesome. Um, I really have never heard anything negative. Not at all.
And when you're dealing with vendors, I
Hmm.
mean, does that come up in terms of your interactions with them, in terms of how they respond to doing business here, or saying, oh, do you get that feedback from that side as
From the
well?
vendors,
Yeah.
I don't deal with the vendors so much regularly anymore. Um, but I will say that, especially since the acquisition, they've commented on how, how great we were to work with and how prompt we were with paying and resolving issues, and not having things linger on for months and months and months. And so that was a real positive thing. And especially coming from vendors, because they're the first ones to really crab at you if you don't pay on time, and, um, you're 30 days out or 60 days out. So, um, yeah. And the customers, I mean, we have a lot of repeat customers. We do a lot of work with, schools, Cabrillo and the city schools, hospitals, and, a lot of our work is repeat business like that, because we do a good job, and we're there when we say we're going to be there, and we complete things when we say we are, unless it's out of our control. And I think that means a lot to people and the community, and being local.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of that, also, what when we talk about it as it being a family business, I'm curious how you would describe working here, aside from just what you do, but just the environment that's created here. I mean, do you feel like this is a family?
I
It's a
do.
family business, obviously. And now
Hmm.
Tom and Blue are here, but do you consider it to be a big family?
I do. I do. I've felt like that really from the very beginning. Um, I've been here so long too that I feel like I am a Wilson in a way. I always tell them they could adopt me anytime, But they they are just they truly, like I said before, they truly care about their employees. We're not just a number. We're not just a person. They know so much about each and every one of us because they ask and they care, and that's really rare. They Tom knows about my kids and what they're doing and how they're doing, and asks often. Blue, the same thing. Julie, even our coworkers. I think we've created this environment that is like a big family. Not only is it a family-owned business, but we all have been here so long together, a lot of us, and we spend so much time here. You could go to any business and just do your hours and leave, but we don't do that. We really communicate, and it's nice. It's great.
Yeah, it is unique.
Hmm.
Where
Very unique.
did you work prior to this?
I worked for Scotts Valley Circuits in Scotts Valley,
Okay.
which is how I met Tom Wilson. He actually, I was the controller there, and when they had an opening he knew I had a construction background, and so when they had an opening, one of my friends worked at George Wilson, and so he asked that they contact me to see if I'd be interested in the position, because he had met me out in Scotts Valley a few months back, and it sounded like a good opportunity and a great company, and so I said yes, and the rest is history.
So I'm curious, though, maybe just comparing that, because like you said, the
Hmm.
environment here is so
Right.
rare, and the fact that relationships and the longevity of so many
Right.
employees, I mean, the rarity of that.
Sure. Well, the Scotts Valley Circuits was owned by a woman, um, and it was not the same at all. Although it was a smaller business, I think there's different dynamics. And she was the boss, we were the employees, and that's what it was. And we worked, we left, came back. There was no, it just wasn't the same. No comparison at all.
And so I'm curious then, the people here that, like you said, have been here so long, you consider them like have you made friendships here?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
A
Yes.
lot, or
Um, for me, a lot, but I've been here a long time too. There's people that I still keep in touch with and still see on occasion that used to work here. That whether it be a family reason or moving out of the area, no longer work here. But yeah, I have a lot of friendships here, yes.
Some of the fun memories you have or crazy stories. I've heard some stories about the picnics and
The picnics,
I mean, is there
yes.
any stories you'd like to share in that vein?
Well, we used to, Tom Akrup and I, who's the former controller, he retired and has since passed away. We loved to, when we were at the River Street, so this is back in the early 90s, Tom Akrup and Jim's office were next to each other, and I sat in an open area in that same area. And Tom and Jim and I, we used to love to do little pranks on each other. And so it would just be silly things sometimes. But I remember one time specifically, Tom and I decided to gang up on Jim. And so there was a Santa that sang Christmas carols. It was like a little stuffed Santa. And we had it out for a while, and it was playing, and he'd go, shut that, music off. It was bugging him after a while. So we went up into the little T-bar ceiling, and we put it above his desk with a string. And so that's how you activate it, was pulling this little switch. And so we would do it every so often when he was in his office, and he couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And he would get so mad. And he knew it was us. So, and he'd come out and say, where is that damn thing? And we just pretend like we didn't know what he was talking about. That was really funny. And it went on for weeks before we finally, I think he either found it or we told him. I don't remember because it was so long ago. We also, for his, I think it was his 70th birthday, Tom Akrup and I, we were kind of partners in crime, but we decorated his office. We went, there's pictures in the room of saying who did it because it was a surprise. And we filled his entire room with balloons, and we put all this, 70s stuff on there, and just fun things like that I remember, like I would do with my family, just, surprise them with a birthday. But the picnics were a big highlight. Everybody loved the picnics. Everybody enjoyed getting together. We had a lot of our employees do the barbecuing. They would go over to the Portuguese Hall the night before and prep all the meat and get it ready for barbecue. And Jim would go over and supervise a little bit and make sure everybody's doing things right. But it was very personable. Everybody's families came. We'd have jumpy houses. We would have karaoke. We would have, all kinds of fun things. And that was great. I mean, other than, day-to-day work can be grinding sometimes, but, it was always nice to have that every year to look forward to.
So that was a once-a-year thing?
Once a year we did a picnic for years.
And how long did that go on?
That lasted probably till the mid to late 90s. And then, we hit some times where it was, the economic times were tough, and so we didn't do as much. But then when we started back again, instead of doing the picnics, we started going to the boardwalk and having evenings at the boardwalk, a couple rides and food, and that was fun too.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I just got a couple more for you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some of the slow times, and obviously 2008 and the market crashes and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Right.
What are your memories of that time in terms of how it affected
Well,
your business?
again, just being the Wilsons being the great people that they are. A lot of companies would say, okay, it's slow, we don't have work, you're laid off, we don't need you. And what they did collectively is, rather than lay anybody off because they value all of their employees, we did like a work furlough. So to keep everyone employed and almost fully compensated, we started for a while doing every other Friday off. So every other Friday I would take off, and we would coordinate with our other people in the department to make sure there was coverage. So every other week we would have 32 hours instead of 40, but it was helping with the overall expenses of the business, and it was enabling people to continue to work. And then when it wasn't getting better, I think we went to every Friday for a period of time. But then also the Wilsons and I looked into partial unemployment. So and so we worked something out with the unemployment so that people that needed to or wanted to could use some partial unemployment for it. I don't remember what it was called, the work, something that they worked with people that were dealing with that same issue. But I just, those memories, although they were rough, because, there were times when if we didn't get jobs, we were worried about, keeping everybody here. But rather than, do what a lot of companies do, they made it work so that everybody could stay employed. And the Wilsons themselves did the same thing. It wasn't like they said, well, okay, you employees, you are going to do a work furlough and you're going to take a pay cut, but we're going to continue with our salary. They as well took the same pay cut that everyone else did. And I don't know anyone else that would do that for the business, for their employees, to keep everybody here and working.
And how long did that sort of adjusted work schedule last?
My memory is not going to be totally correct, but I'm going to say it was probably a year that we did that. We started with the every other and then went to every Friday. But
And
just
then it took off.
and then it turned around, which is great. And so we were able to gradually start working back into that. Although a lot of people got used to the Fridays off, like, maybe I'll keep that.
Another 3-day week.
Exactly. But just another way that the Wilsons just did what they could to keep everybody working, to keep everybody busy, and being able to make ends meet, and especially in economic times like we had, and living in Santa Cruz, a lot of us are in the nearby areas. So yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, or you'd want people to know who are going to see this about George H. and being here?
It's been 28 great years with George H. And I honestly can't think of a time that I haven't looked forward to coming to work and seeing everybody and working with the Wilsons and working for them and being proud to work for them. I know that although George Wilson has now been acquired by another firm, we still have the same ethics. We still have the same, the work ethic. And the Wilsons are still working just as hard as they ever did, because that's just who they are. They're wonderful people to work with. And I can't say enough about them, really. Yeah.
Lisa, thank you.
Yeah.
We made it.
Get me all teary-eyed again.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.